Jimmy Kimmel was caught spreading the dangerous and just ridiculous lie that Charlie Kirk was killed by a MAGA right-wing extremist. Well, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr saw the clip and he's now spoken out, threatening action against both ABC and Jimmy Kimmel. But before we get to that, let's take a look at what Jimmy Kimmel said on his show in the first place.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
Absolutely disgusting remarks there. Just spreading the lie that Charlie Kirk was killed by a MAGA Republican actually puts MAGA Republicans in even more danger. You're painting half of the country as right-wing extremists who should be feared. And Lord, the next time a Democrat comes into office, you can only imagine the excuses they'll use to actually persecute Republicans and to try to take away guns. This really is a dangerous slope here, especially when the left and the media have been pushing the Trump is Hitler, Trump is an authoritarian narrative for over a decade now. And in fact, look, it's not just Jimmy Kimmel. It's been all of the mainstream media networks. The majority of Democrats believe that Charlie Kirk's assassin was right-wing, and it's not much better on a national level. So this latest YouGov poll, 21% of all Americans believe Charlie Kirk's killer was a Democrat, 24% believe it was Republican. So more Americans believe he was a Republican versus Democrat. The majority here, 40%, are not sure. Of course, that's likely going to change in the coming days as more information comes out and the information war continues to go back and forth. But that right there just shows you the misinformation that the Democrat Party has put out there and the success that they've had in convincing people to believe their lies, even though they're obviously wrong. I mean, just take a look at what was engraved on the bullets. Take a look at the trans lover, the gay, you take a look at that, and it's pretty obvious where this is going. You take a look at the press conferences that local authorities held in Utah, talking about his left-leaning beliefs and how he became radicalized. You take a look at the letter. You take a look at the text messages, and even in text, it's written down that he hated Charlie Kirk, and he believed that there wasn't a way to fight back against the hate, and he believed that this was the only way to eradicate that hate. I don't see what is so hard to understand about that, yet that's what Jimmy Kimmel wants to push out there. Well, Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, sat down with Benny Johnson and said this.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are, avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had a tweet out last week where he was saying that, emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear from the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC, I want to reinvigorate the public interest in. What people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. Well, look, I think what you said there strikes me as a very reasonable, minimal step that can be taken. I mean, obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at. And again, we may ultimately be called to be a judge on that. But this also strikes me as sort of conduct that to some extent shows some sort of desperate irrelevance. I mean, we're sort of exiting an era where the three main legacy broadcast networks could control and dictate the narrative to the American people. And one of the things that President Trump did when he ran for office, he ran directly at that legacy media establishment. And he smashed the facade that they get to control what we say, what we think, the narrative around events. And we're seeing a lot of consequences that are flowing from President Trump doing that. I mean, look, NPR has been defunded. PBS has been defunded. Colbert is retiring. Joy Reid is out at MSNBC. Terry Moran has gone from ABC and so now admitting that they are biased. CBS has now made some commitments to us that they're going to return to more fact-based journalism. And so I think you see some lashing out from people like Kimmel, who are frankly talentless and are looking for ways to get attention. But their grip on the narrative is slipping. That doesn't mean that it's still not important to hold them to the public interest standard. That's what we're going to have to do. So I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
So look, there's obviously a very fine line to walk here because we do have the First Amendment, which not only guarantees freedom of speech, but also freedom of the press. So these media entities, they can have their own perspectives and they can have their own editorials. That's their right. But there is a very clear difference when a media outlet not only engages in consistent, willful misinformation, but when that media outlet is funded by taxpayers, when that media outlet is subsidized by our money. And that's what we saw happen with PBS, NPR. That's why they were defunded, because they were funded by all of us, and they didn't just give the facts. They didn't give it both ways. They weren't right down the middle. Instead, they were very clearly an arm of the Democrat Party, only propping up Democrat political candidates, Democrat causes, while always finding the way to spin Republicans in the worst light possible. In the case of ABC, Jimmy Kimmel, well, they're broadcast over airwaves that are funded by taxpayers. It's not like your cable TV provider, right? Where you pay for the service, where you pay for specific networks that you want, right? So this is a very different thing. And by the way, shortly after Brendan Carr made those comments, this news is breaking as of 20 minutes ago. Nexstar will no longer air Jimmy Kimmel live on its ABC stations because of hosts Charlie Kirk comments. Just to put in perspective how big of a deal this is, as of 2016, Nexstar served an estimated 39% of United States households. So almost half of the households with ABC will no longer have it because Nexstar is no longer going to broadcast Kimmel. That is, just talk about a major blow there. And from what I understand, Nexstar has only grown since 2016, but I couldn't find an exact percentage, and I always want to be as exact as I can with the facts here. Now, of course, it's not just Jimmy Kimmel spreading this misinformation. It's all over MSNBC. I'm sure you've seen it. We've talked about it here on the channel. But even last night on CNN, after the press conference, after the text messages, just after all of this information came out, they were trying to pin this on, well, let's not forget that Tyler Robinson's father was a MAGA Republican, and there was just discontent and tension there, and that surely contributed to all of this.
But hear it? I think I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think this was a emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other, not trying to defend some ideology.
But although I do think there's clearly an ideological difference. That's why I played about what they said about the family. I mean, the ideological difference that he was reacting to wasn't just Charlie Kirk. It was also maybe his dad. I mean, his father was, according to him, MAGA. So that conflict was there, clearly.
But this is a young man who's dating a person in transition. And I'm a conservative father, and
I'm sorry, he's trying to spin that as emotional. It sounds similar to what the ABC News host said yesterday about how the text messages are very loving and there's such a tragic human component to all of this. But clearly, when you're taking all of that into consideration, when you take into the political discussion and the debate about whether or not it's right to transition children as young as 5 years old or without parental consent, or just all of these different things that are being talked about in the public eye, it's really dishonest and disingenuous to claim that this had nothing to do with politics. Well, despite all of the media gaslighting, people are waking up, including people you wouldn't traditionally think would agree with Charlie Kirk. And guess what? That includes a young makeup star named Jeffree Star. Now, before we get into this clip, because he actually appeared on the Piers Morgan show and stunned a lot of his fans, stunned a lot of Democrats. He's already facing a lot of backlash, but I think that as more and more people who, again, don't traditionally align with the right speak out against the reaction of the left and speak up in support of Charlie Kirk and his mission, I think that more people will actually be inspired to speak out and step up. But before we get into that, I would like to acknowledge the members of today's Governor's Club: Colt P.I., Mike Fullsame, Inky67, Sage and Stone Homestead, Jeremy 2001 Happy, USMC Carr, Steph S, Lizzie Tom, Bama Riddenauer, Dennis Nevin as the members of today's Governor's Club people who give tips and super thanks to the channel. I am so glad that you're here, and without further ado, here's Jeffree Star on the Piers Morgan show.
He encouraged everyone to speak about their beliefs, whether he believed them or not. Am I a Republican? No, I'm a person. Because I'm standing up for someone that passed away, I'm now being called names in the chat. This is what's wrong with a lot of you people. You will never get far in life. You are sick in the head. Someone just said they're unsubscribing from me. Thank God, please. Because if you believe in they and thems, you're part of the problem. If you're so stupid enough to go against science, please unfollow me.
Jeffree, what happened to you as a consequence of that going viral?
So about 100,000 people have unfollowed me this week for speaking about Charlie, the entire thing. I can't believe so many people in America are cheering and praising his death. It's honestly disgusting. So while I was live streaming, I found out about what happened in real time, and it was so horrifying and devastating. I've followed him for a few years. Do I agree with everything he's ever said? Of course I don't. But I loved a lot of what he said, and it resonates with me. But the good news is hundreds of thousands of more people have followed me, and they're on the exact same page. So I don't care about the following. It's not about that. I just had to speak my mind.
Have you been surprised, shocked, depressed by the reaction? I mean, I'm genuinely stunned. I thought I'd seen everything in the news game going back 40 years. But to see the outpouring of gleeful celebration of a young man's murder for expressing his opinions, and a young man who would deliberately go into, the opposition territory, college campuses, and get people to line up and say, come on argue with me in a respectful way. The idea that he gets murdered for doing that all the time seemed particularly perverse to me. Were you?
Exactly.
How did you feel about it?
I was honestly horrified because I'm someone that's always been outspoken. I love the truth, and for some reason, people are afraid of the truth. I've been told all week, he would have hated someone like you. No, he would have respected me because I'm my own person and I know how to have my own thoughts. So when I saw it in real time, I was completely devastated. I can't believe someone that has an opinion is now dead. It's disgusting.
Now, to put all of this into perspective, here on YouTube, Jeffree Star has 15 million subscribers. On Instagram, he has 13 million. And on TikTok, 8 million. So definitely a huge digital footprint. Most of his followers tend to be younger. And so I hope that that voice of reason will reach through and permeate the propaganda that is coming from the left. As always, though, all of this is just my analysis and commentary. That's what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So if the FCC gets involved with what Jimmy Kimmel said, what do you think? Do you think that the FCC has every right to do that? Do you think it's government overreach? Do you think it's hypocrisy on the side of Republicans? Or do you think that, hey, the free market should take care of it, and if enough consumers and enough viewers complain, then, hey, we're going to see what happened with Nexstar, and eventually these distributors are going to just pull the plug and say, we don't want to be associated with you. Like, what are your thoughts on all of that? Let me know down in the comments below. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.